I had a gut feeling my wife was planning to divorce me, so I went ahead and moved my money around. 3 weeks later, sure enough, she filed for divorce, but then she backed off when her plan blew up in her face. Hey folks, before we jump into today's story, I could really use your help. The channel's been slowing down lately, and one of the best things you can do is hit that subscribe button. It's quick, it's free, and it helps us keep cranking out more content. Your support means the world to us. Let's keep this thing growing together. Thanks a ton. All right, let's dive in. Hey everyone. I've been lurking on here for a while now, scrolling through stories, never thinking I'd have one of my own to share. But life's got a funny way of smacking you upside the head when you least expect it. I've been carrying this weight for months, and I just need to let it out. Let me start by saying, I'm not the kind of guy who jumps to conclusions or assumes the worst. My wife, we'll call her M, and I have been together 5 years, married for 3. I thought we were solid. Sure, we had the usual ups and downs like any couple, but there wasn't anything that made me think something was seriously wrong. Honestly, for most of our time together, we were that couple, real tight. We had dumb inside jokes, bickered over movie choices, and found a rhythm that just worked. She'd go all out planning fun date nights, and I'd pick up her favorite takeout when she was beat from work. It felt easy, like we had this love thing figured out. Which is exactly why what happened next hit me like a freight train. About 5 months ago, things started to feel different. At first, it was little stuff. The kind of changes you might miss if you weren't paying attention. Like, she suddenly started taking her phone everywhere, even just going to the kitchen or folding laundry. Before that, her phone would sit untouched on the coffee table for hours, and she never cared if I picked it up. I joked with her one day, saying, "What? You running some secret spy operation now?" She laughed and said work had been emailing her a lot. All right, fair enough. But then, a few days later, she put a password on her phone. That one threw me. She'd never had one before. When I casually asked her why, she said something vague about hackers and security. I didn't push it, didn't want to seem paranoid, but it felt off. And that was just the start. She started taking phone calls in private, stepping out of the room like it was some big secret. It wasn't subtle either. Her phone would ring, and she'd be like, "Oh, let me grab this real quick," then disappear into the bedroom or out onto the porch. If I asked who it was, she'd say, "Just a friend from work." Then came the new move, putting her phone face down on the table. I didn't even know that was a thing until one day I handed her something, and she quickly slid her phone away like I wasn't supposed to see something. It happened fast, but it stuck with me. And it wasn't just the phone stuff. She started pulling away. Our conversations felt strained, like dragging a heavy load uphill. I'd bring up plans for the future, like, where should we go for our anniversary? Or should we start saving for a new car? And she'd just nod and mumble something like, "Yeah, we'll see," then change the subject. Then came the day everything kinda clicked for me. It was a random Wednesday. She told me she was grabbing coffee with a friend after work. That wasn't unusual, she did that now and then. But I happened to be out running errands nearby and figured, hey, I'll surprise her. Thought it'd be a cute gesture. But when I got there, she wasn't with anyone. She was pacing outside the cafe, phone to her ear. I stayed in the car. Something about her tone felt serious. I didn't mean to eavesdrop, but I caught a few things. It's almost ready, and starting fresh soon. My stomach dropped. I couldn't tell what she was talking about, but it didn't sound like drama with a coworker. It sounded bigger, like she had a whole plan in motion. When she got home, I asked how her coffee date went, trying to keep things light. She launched into this detailed story about how her friend was venting about her boyfriend. It was so random, I just stared at her for a second. "What do you mean?" I asked. She shrugged and said something like, "I just think we should have everything in one place. You know, account info, passwords, documents, in case of an emergency." I didn't know what to say. We'd never talked about anything like that before. And the timing? It felt weird, considering everything else going on. "What kind of emergency?" I asked, trying to keep it chill. Again, she just shrugged. "It's smart, isn't it? What if something happens to one of us, or we need to make a big financial move fast?" Now, on the surface, it made sense. But the way she said it, it was too polished, like she'd practiced it. Like she'd been waiting for the right moment to drop it. I nodded and mumbled something like, "Yeah, sure, that's a good idea," but inside, I was buzzing. Alarms going off everywhere. Why now? Why all this sudden interest in finances when we've always been pretty relaxed and separate about money? That night, I couldn't stop replaying her words in my head, trying to figure out what they really meant. Was this just normal adult stuff? Or was I reading into something I didn't want to admit? But then I remembered the phone calls, the cafe conversation, how distant she'd been. It all started to connect, and I didn't like the picture it was painting. I hadn't taken any action at that point. But a few days later, she brought it up again. We were in the kitchen. I was making a sandwich. She was scrolling through her phone, and she goes, "Have you thought more about getting the bank stuff organized? Like, do you know where all the account info is?" I set the knife down and turned to look at her. "All right, what's going on?" I asked, keeping my voice steady but serious. "You've been bringing up finances a lot lately. Is there something I should know?" That's when she finally looked up from her phone, and she seemed genuinely surprised that I'd called her on it. "No, nothing's wrong," she said real quick. So quick, it actually made me laugh a little. "I just think it's important, that's all. You know, for emergencies." "Emergencies? Like what?" I asked. She shrugged, face blank. "I don't know. Just life stuff. It's not a big deal. I promise. I just think it's something we should get on top of." Her answer was so vague, it didn't sit right with me. It didn't sound like a casual suggestion anymore. It felt like she was hiding something. I just didn't know what. So the next day, while she was at work, I decided to check our finances. I logged into our joint account, and, sure enough, I found some things that didn't look quite right. Nothing huge, just little transfers and withdrawals over the last month. Tiny amounts here and there, nothing labeled for bills or groceries or anything usual. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but it sure looked like she was pulling money out for something. I just couldn't figure out what. I thought about bringing it up to her, but something told me to hold off. If I was wrong, I'd look like a fool. And if I was right, well, I needed to play it smart. It was eating me up inside, so I reached out to someone I trusted, a college buddy of mine who also happens to be a lawyer. I told him what I'd found, trying not to sound like some paranoid nut. "Look," he said after I laid it all out, "I'm not saying something's definitely going on, but you're not crazy for wanting to protect yourself. If you're worried about your assets, now's the time to act. Better safe than sorry." He walked me through the basics, how to lock things down without causing a scene. And honestly, the whole thing felt heavy. It was like prepping for a disaster when I wasn't even sure there was one. But the more I sat with it, the more it made sense. If she really was planning something, I needed to protect myself. No, Brian, know how much it hurt to admit. And it did hurt. This wasn't just about money. This was about the life we'd built together. I kept thinking about our wedding day, those late-night talks about our future, the dumb jokes we used to laugh at. How the hell did we get here? Doing all this, making these moves, it felt like giving up. Like I was officially letting go of the trust we used to have. That night, while she was out, I sat at my desk and pulled out my laptop. My hands were shaking while I opened it and started going through everything: bank accounts, investments, the deed to the house. Every document felt like a betrayal. But there was this voice in my head that wouldn't let up. "You're not trying to hurt her. You're trying to protect yourself." I made a list of what I could move and how to do it without raising alarms. And as I typed it all out, this heavy pressure settled in my chest. I trusted her with everything for years, and now here I was, playing defense against the one person I thought would never turn on me. I called my mom after that. Told her I needed her help, but didn't go into the full story. "I just need you to hold on to some things for a while," I said. "Nothing bad. Just something I need to do to cover myself, just in case." She was quiet for a second, probably trying to figure out what I wasn't telling her. "You okay?" she asked. I could hear the worry in her voice. "Yeah," I lied. "It's just a precaution. Nothing to stress about." She didn't push, but I could hear the hesitation before she replied. "Of course, sweetheart. Whatever you need." When I hung up, I felt a weird mix of relief and guilt. I hated dragging her into this mess, but knowing she was on my side, that gave me some footing in a situation that felt completely out of control. By the time I got home that night, I'd already started the process. I'd moved most of my assets, the cash, the investments, even the house, into my mom's name. I left just enough in the joint account to keep things looking normal. The rest was locked up tight. She didn't notice a thing. Walked in, kissed me on the cheek, asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I acted calm, like everything was fine, but inside, I was a mess. Part of me felt terrible, like I'd betrayed her trust. But another part, the more logical part, felt relieved. Like I was finally taking back control of something that had slipped away from me. For the next 4 days, I stuck to our regular routine. Didn't act any different. She seemed content, even unusually cheerful at times. But instead of making me feel better, it just made me more suspicious. If she was planning something, she was hiding it well. Too well. But here's what really caught my attention. She never brought up the finances again. Not once. Not after I questioned her about it. Not even casually. At first, I figured maybe I'd overreacted. Maybe she dropped it because it wasn't that important. But the more I thought about it, the more it felt like avoidance. Like she was afraid to bring it up again after I called her out. I caught her watching me a few times too, just kind of observing me, like she was trying to read my mood or deciding if she should say something. And each time I noticed, she'd look away real quick, pretending to be focused on her phone or the TV or some book. It wasn't obvious, but it was there. Attention. Like she was waiting on me to bring it up, like she didn't want to be the one to push again. And that silence? It only made things worse. M's not the type to just drop something important. Her quiet wasn't forgetfulness, it felt deliberate. If she was testing the waters, I wasn't about to take the bait. And if she was waiting for some kind of sign, I sure as hell wasn't giving her the green light. Whatever her next move was, I knew I had to stay one step ahead. Something was brewing. I just didn't know what or when it would hit. All I could do was get ready. That night, I made sure everything was locked down tight. I went back over the paperwork, combing through every detail of the asset transfers to my mom. The house, the savings, the investments, it was all officially in her name now, tucked away in an uncontested trust. I even gave her a call to double-check she had all the documents in order. 3 weeks went by. Everything felt weirdly normal. Too normal, honestly. She started acting more affectionate, chatting about random stuff like work or what to eat for dinner. It threw me off. This was the same woman who'd been emotionally checked out for months, barely making it past small talk. It made me wonder, had I overreacted? Maybe all that weird behavior had just been stress, or something I didn't quite understand. I started to doubt myself. Then came Friday night. She turned off the TV, sat me down on the couch, and said, "We need to talk." I felt my stomach drop before she even said a word. "I think we should get a divorce," she said, calm, like she'd rehearsed it. There was no anger, no tears, just cold and brino of fact, like she was letting me know we were out of milk. I stared at her, not even sure what to say. She launched into the usual speech, how she needed space, wanted to find herself again, felt like she'd lost her identity in our marriage. All the standard breakup lines. Nothing that really meant anything. But then she changed her tone. "You know, I've sacrificed a lot for you over the years," she said. "And I don't think you've ever really appreciated it. I deserve more." That part hit different. She wasn't just ending things, she was rewriting the story, making it sound like this was all my fault. Like I owed her something, and she was here to collect. As I sat there trying to piece it all together, one question kept bouncing around in my head. Why now? Then she dropped another line that started putting the puzzle together. "A friend of mine's been helping me see things more clearly," she said, not even looking at me. A friend. I kept quiet and let her talk, but inside, I was spiraling. Who was this friend? And why were they suddenly so involved in my marriage? The way she said it, it didn't sound casual. It felt like someone had been in her ear for a while, planting seeds. This wasn't just a breakup. It was a plan. And the more she talked about sacrifices and what she deserved, the more I started getting suspicious. What sacrifices was she even talking about? She always said she was happy. I busted my ass to give her the life she wanted. It wasn't just about money, either. When she asked to move closer to her job, I agreed, even though it doubled my commute. When she wanted to go on that overpriced yoga retreat last year, I made it happen, skipped the vacation I'd been looking forward to so she could go. I supported her through 2 career changes, told her to go for it because I wanted her to be happy. I thought being a good husband meant putting her first whenever I could. And it's not like I was some cold, distant guy. I showed up. I remembered her birthday, the little things she said she liked. When she felt stuck in a rut, I suggested we try date nights again. I listened to her vent about her job, her friends, her family. I wasn't perfect, but I tried damn hard. So hearing her say, "I deserve more?" That stung. I couldn't even pretend to buy it. This wasn't about anything I did or didn't do. Something had shifted in her, whether it was that so-called friend or something else entirely. The woman sitting across from me wasn't the one I married. And I wasn't about to let her rewrite the history of our relationship just to fit this new version of herself. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I just nodded and said something neutral like, "If that's how you feel, then I guess we should figure out the next steps." She looked surprised I wasn't putting up a fight. But honestly, my focus had already shifted. I needed to find out who or what had flipped that switch in her. She didn't just wake up one morning and decide she wanted out. This had been building, and I wasn't going to let it blindside me again. After that talk, she moved into her own apartment. By Monday, I had divorce papers in my hands. And let me tell you, they weren't just about ending the marriage. They were a full-on land grab. She wanted half the house, half my savings, the assets, the car, everything. Plus, she tacked on some vague spousal support demands that made zero sense, especially considering how much she earns. It didn't feel like hurt feelings. It felt like someone had coached her, someone was helping her make this move. So, I started digging. I couldn't exactly ask her who was behind it, so I had to get creative. I started with her social media. She hadn't blocked me, and even though she didn't post much, I combed through everything, likes, comments, old photos, looking for anything new. And that's when I noticed a pattern. A guy named Dylan kept liking her posts and dropping comments. Nothing over the top, but just enough to make me stop and look twice. His profile was public. I clicked. At first glance, Dylan just looked like your average 32-something marketing guy. Nothing stood out, until I started scrolling. Then I saw it, a photo he posted at the same exact cafe where I'd seen my wife a few weeks back. Same day I overheard her talking about starting fresh. My gut twisted. I kept scrolling. More subtle signs. A comment on one of her pictures that said, "You've got this." A selfie from what looked a lot like her new apartment. Nothing concrete, but enough to make my alarm bells go off. I didn't know exactly what to do with all this, but I knew I couldn't just sit on my hands. That line she dropped, a friend helping her see things clearly, it stuck with me. I wanted to know who this friend really was. So I reached out to someone who might know, Natalie. She'd been friends with my wife for years, and if anyone had the inside scoop, it was her. I kept it casual at first. Asked if she'd talked to my wife lately or noticed anything strange. She played dumb, said she didn't know anything about a friend or any advice being passed around. I pushed a little harder, but she shut the conversation down real quick, saying she couldn't help and didn't want to get involved. Felt rushed, like she was trying to steer clear of the whole situation. I wasn't giving up that easy. I called Jenna, another mutual friend. Tried the same approach, light at first. She responded kind of vague, like she didn't want to say too much. But when I pressed again, she hung up on me. I was sitting there, frustrated and spinning my wheels, trying to figure out my next move, when Jenna called back. She said she wanted to make sure nothing she said would get traced back to her. I promised it wouldn't. After a long pause, she finally told me the truth. Turns out my wife had been spending a lot of time with a guy named Dylan, someone she met at work. Jenna didn't know much more than that, but she said from what she'd heard, Dylan was heavily involved in the advice my wife had been getting about the divorce. Hearing his name out loud felt like the last puzzle piece snapping into place. So that was it. This wasn't about needing space or rediscovering herself. Someone else was involved, and he wasn't just hanging out in the background. He was helping steer the whole thing. I knew then that I had to deal with this in my own way. That Saturday, I drove out to her apartment building, parked about a block away, just to see if I could confirm what I already suspected. A few hours passed, and then I saw them. She and Dylan walked out together. They weren't holding hands or anything, but they walked close, leaning in when they talked. Comfortable. Familiar. That was enough for me. They got in his car and drove off. I didn't follow them. I didn't need to. Right then, it was crystal clear. She hadn't just stopped loving me. She'd been planning her exit and planning it with him. The distancing. The weird financial questions. The sudden pressure. The divorce papers. This wasn't just a breakup. This was a setup. And she had backup the whole time. I went home that night with my thoughts racing. The betrayal cut deep, but the part that really got to me was how planned it all felt. She wasn't just leaving. She was building something new with Dylan and trying to leave me with nothing. But what she didn't know was that I had plans too. The first mediation session was tense the moment we walked in. Her lawyer came in carrying a binder so thick, it looked like he was about to sue a corporation. He rattled off her demands like they were perfectly reasonable. Half the house, all the money, the car, my assets, plus some nonsense about spousal support that didn't make a lick of sense considering her salary. I stayed quiet. Let him talk. I was waiting for my lawyer's move. When it was our turn, my attorney slid a stack of documents across the table and said, "Before we move forward, I think everyone should take a look at these." Her lawyer picked up the papers and started flipping through them. His expression changed almost immediately. That confident posture vanished. His eyebrows drew together as he read page after page. "What is this?" he asked, looking at my lawyer. These documents show that all major assets were transferred into a trust under my client's mother's name. My attorney replied, cool as ever. The transfers were completed several weeks before your client filed for divorce. And the trust is fully legal and irrevocable. You could hear a pin drop. Her lawyer turned to her, clearly irritated. You didn't mention this, he said flatly. She yanked the papers out of his hands and started flipping through them. Her face went red. This can't be real, she muttered, staring at the signatures, the notarized dates. Then she turned to me. Her face twisted from disbelief to fury. You planned this, she said, like I just committed a felony. You knew I was going to file. You set this up to screw me over. I didn't say a word. Just sat there while she put it all together on her own. Her lawyer, now clearly flustered, asked mine to explain further. So he did, calmly, slowly, laying out every piece of evidence in that stack. The dates lined up perfectly. Everything had been transferred long before she filed. Every signature was notarized. Every move legal and airtight. They didn't have a leg to stand on. She was furious. You're unbelievable, she snapped, leaning forward in her chair. I can't believe you'd do this to me. I didn't say a word. What was there to say? This wasn't something I did to her. This was something I did for myself, because she'd made it clear she wasn't going to walk away quietly. The meeting wrapped up with her lawyer mumbling something about reconsidering their strategy, but everyone in that room knew they were out of place. As we left the building, she pulled me aside in the hallway. Her face was a mix of anger and panic. This isn't over, she hissed. You're going to regret this. I looked her dead in the eye and said, I already regret trusting you. That's the only regret I've got. After that, things went off the rails faster than I expected. She started calling me nonstop. At first, she sounded calm, even a little sorry, leaving voicemails like, we just need to talk, or this got out of hand, but we can fix it. But when I didn't respond, the tone flipped. By day 2, she was switching between sobbing and screaming in her messages. One would be her crying about how she made a mistake, how she didn't want to lose what we had. The next would be her tearing into me, calling me selfish, cold, blaming me for everything that had gone wrong in her life. I ignored it all. My lawyer had already told me not to engage, and honestly, I had no interest. I was done playing her games. But she wasn't done. When the calls and texts didn't work, she started spinning stories. Mutual friends told me she was saying the whole divorce was a joke, part of some weird stunt or test. A prank? Seriously? Who files real legal paperwork as a prank? People started poking holes in her story almost immediately. They asked things like, if it was a prank, why hire a lawyer? Why make specific demands? So she changed the narrative again. Now, she claimed it wasn't a joke, it was a test of our relationship. And somehow, I had failed it. She told people I had betrayed her by reacting the way I did, that I broke her trust. Some folks bought it, at least for a little while. I got messages from mutual friends, stuff like, wow, I didn't know she was going through that. Or, you should have talked things out instead of being so harsh. Even her brother came at me, accusing me of overreacting. But I kept quiet. I knew the truth would come out eventually. And it did, thanks to a guy named Brian. We weren't close, just acquaintances, really. But he reached out a few weeks after mediation and said, hey, I've got something you need to see. We met up, and he pulled out his phone. Showed me screenshots of text between her and Dylan. I blinked at the screen, stunned. How did you even get these? I asked. Brian explained that he and Dylan shared a mutual friend. That friend had been around them enough to start getting uncomfortable with what Dylan was saying, especially when Dylan started bragging about how he was helping her secure her future. Didn't take long for that friend to figure out what securing her future really meant, bleeding me dry. Feeling guilty, the guy grabbed screenshots of the texts and sent them to Brian, figuring Brian had a better connection with me and could warn me. This dude's been playing both sides, Brian said, shaking his head, hyping her up to take you for everything while making her believe he'd be there for her after. He handed me the texts. You didn't deserve any of this, he said. And the texts? They were brutal. She wasn't just venting. She was planning her moves step by step, and Dylan was coaching her through it all. One message said, once the settlement's done, we'll have everything we need. I just need him to agree to the terms. Dylan replied, don't back down. Make him feel guilty if you have to. He owes you. We'll start fresh once you've got the money. I just stared at that screen. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't an emotional spiral. This was cold, calculated, a full-on setup. I thanked Brian and went home, my brain spinning. Suddenly, everything made sense. The distance, the pressure around money, the demands during mediation. It had all been part of a plan she and Dylan were cooking up behind the scenes. Brian shared those texts with a few other friends. Word got around fast. Her whole story collapsed almost overnight. People who had taken her side or stayed neutral started backing off. Some of her closest friends stopped talking to her altogether. By the time the divorce was finalized, she was left with only her personal things. Her lawyer backed down quietly after realizing there was nothing left to fight for. All those bold demands had been shredded by the evidence I'd presented. The trust I'd created with my mom? Solid. Untouchable. And Dylan? He disappeared the second it all came crashing down. I wouldn't be shocked if he used her just like she tried to use me. From what I could tell, he'd been feeding her dreams of freedom and a fresh start. But when it became clear she wasn't walking away with anything, he bailed. After that, the calls kept coming. But now they were different. No more accusations. Just begging. Please, one voicemail said. Can we just talk? I'll do anything to fix this. Another. You don't have to forgive me, but can't we just settle this? I'll drop everything if you'll just call me back. I didn't. I couldn't. It was too late for any of that. Even her own family started pulling away. Her brother reached out at one point to apologize for the things he said. I didn't know what she was putting you through, he told me. I'm sorry I ever took her word for it. As for me, I kept the house, kept my savings, and I got back something I hadn't felt in a long time, peace. My mom, God bless her, showed up with paint buckets and a whole list of ideas to help me take back the space, make it mine again. Now, my life feels like it belongs to me. No more overthinking every little conversation. No more second-guessing the woman I shared my bed with. No more betrayal. Just peace. She's a chapter in my story that I've closed. And the rest? That's mine to write, page by page, on my terms.